Another come-from-behind fourth-quarter victory as the Vikings move to 7-1. We're breaking it all down, including the unsung heroes and the new NFC playoff picture. It's coming up next on Superior Sports Talk.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now it's Superior Sports Talk with KARE-11 sports anchor Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman. It's 30 minutes every day, and it's all the Minnesota sports you need. It's Superior Sports Talk, and it starts now.
Back in the lab, Reggie and Luke back at it. Another episode, Superior Sports Talk, presented by Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's your daily 30-minute breakdown, everything Minnesota sports, which you can now find streaming on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick devices. Just look out for and download our Locked On Sports Minnesota app there as well. Reggie's still flying back from D.C., so we're going to the bullpen today with the legend, Sam Ekstrom, on Twitter, at Sam Ekstrom, co-host of the Ron Johnson Show. Sam, how's your arm feeling? You ready to roll? Throw some heat?
My arm's good. I hope you're tossing me some curveballs with your arm today, some knucklers. I can hit some softballs if you want. It was Reggie on the Kirk plane. Is that the flight that you're referring to, or is this a different?
I haven't heard back. So hopefully he comes back with some good content and some good footage for sure. Lots to get into, but first, remember, follow along Locked On Minnesota YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. Leave us a comment, and on Twitter, give us a follow. It's at Locked On MIN, and remember, we're a podcast too, free and available, all platforms, Spotify, Apple, you name it, we got it. Tons of great choices over there. You got the Ron Johnson Show, you got the Football Party, and more. Your one-stop shop with endless Vikings talk with local experts. Do us a favor, hit the subscribe button, and drop us a 5-star review. All right, to football we go. Vikes 20, Commanders 17. Minnesota comes back from down 10 in the fourth quarter, wins its sixth consecutive one-score game. The Vikings are 7-1. Cousins gets his revenge in the return to Washington. And Sam, your Minnesota Vikings are the second best team in the NFL. When I just say those words out loud, how does that make you feel? Like, what's the first few things that come to mind?
This Vikings team defies logic. They are an exhibition in winning on the margins with good coaching, clutch play, and situational awareness, which every week they do fewer dumb things than their opponents. Like, every week, it's a fourth quarter turnover that the Vikings force that either clinches the game or sets them up for victory. Untimely penalties, on Washington. Minnesota, they've been rising above that. They're playing clean. Other teams are messy. Other teams are scattered. Their quarterbacks are making dumb decisions. Vikings are doing that kind of stuff. So sometimes it's not what you're doing, it's what you're not doing, and that's making dumb mistakes. And the Vikings execute. And they are just a masterclass right now in what a different voice in that locker room can represent. And Kevin O'Connell's point yesterday, I thought, in the locker room speech was great. They're playing their best when the best is required. And even though it sounds cliche, coach speak, it absolutely rings true for these Vikings, who are not playing great football for 4 quarters, but rather they're playing great in the fourth quarter when it counts most. And here we are, Luke, 7-1, and I can't believe that we got here, but here we are.
Yeah, speaking of coaches, breaking news, Colts fire head coach Frank Reich. Talk about the difference and the importance of head coaching play. You see the difference of the Vikings and a team like the Colts. It wasn't pretty. In fact, it was kind of downright ugly at times, but they just, like you said, find a way to scratch and claw, find their way to victory. Bill Parcells always used to say it, you are what the record says you are, Vikings 7-1. That makes them the second best team in the NFL. But if you asked 100 people, I bet you maybe 5 would tell you they feel like the second best team in the NFL right now. Their formula for winning right now, rallying back late in every game, every week, it just doesn't feel sustainable to a lot of people when you're facing the cream of the crop in the NFL, the elite teams in the league. especially come playoff time. But here we are. And at this point, we've basically said the same thing 7 weeks in a row now. So they're making it really tough to bet against them for all the reasons you just mentioned, Sam, because all they do is just produce when it matters, when the game's on the line. What's your thoughts on the sustainability of this and just the identity of this team? Are they the comeback kids now at this point? Is that just who they are?
I think that when your quarterback is able to produce this time and time again, that's the biggest variable in all of this, right? Because Kirk Cousins is probably going to be the guy under center every week in this position. And I think that is a legitimate skill that quarterbacks can be good at or be bad at. And I think Kirk Cousins has legitimately gotten better in this regard. He seems to be playing with that quieted mind that Kevin O'Connell wants him to play with. So, given the landscape of the league right now, there's not many other quarterbacks that I would take above Kirk Cousins in the fourth quarter. That's mind-blowing. Like, all the veteran quarterbacks that the league used to rely on for this consistency, they're all playing horribly, right? I mean, Matt Ryan got benched. Aaron Rodgers has lost it. Matthew Stafford and Tom Brady are playing in a punt fest. Russell Wilson is washed. Like, there's not many more fan bases that trust their quarterback more than the Vikings trust Kirk Cousins right now. I mean, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, not many others. I mean, it's definitely a short list, and Kirk Cousins is toward the top of it, which is wild. And that's just crazy. Now, I want people to acknowledge this, Luke, on Kirk. We said for years that Kirk Cousins' stat sheet was window dressing. He's padding the stats. The stats do not reflect the player. He is not playing as well as the stats would reflect. This year, it's the opposite, right? So I am acknowledging that Kirk Cousins is a huge piece behind this winning streak. The stats would suggest he's playing much worse. His stats are not very good. He's got a career-low QBR. But I'm saying that Kirk Cousins is a big reason behind this. So I just want to point out that the argument that applied in previous years where the stats didn't mean as much because he wasn't playing up to them, I think that the same is true. I think it's just reversed. I think that the stats don't reflect how clutch he's been in the fourth quarter, and I'm giving Kirk Cousins credit for that. Feels weird coming out of my mouth with those words, but I think that's the reality.
You make a good point. Like, it's one thing to win close games like 1 week, okay, maybe a special team splash play or a defensive turnover, a scoop and score, a pick six. When it's constantly and continually your quarterback that is leading you back in these games and getting you victories, that says a lot. So to your point, I think you're right on that. Vikes now 5.5 game lead in the NFC North, largest lead in the league. I want to get into the current landscape of the NFC playoff picture and what that looks like and the Vikes' remaining schedule. But first, let's dive a little bit deeper into the game, the box score, the X's and O's. We could talk about Kirk all day. He's certainly the trending topic right now, flooding the internet with the chain gang on the plane, shining the ice. We'll break him down a little bit more later on the football party and throughout the week. But Kirk's the A topic going into Monday morning. TJ Hockenson has to be the B topic, right? 9 targets, 9 catches. I think at least 4, if not 5, went for first downs and moved the chain, 70 yards in his Viking debut. This guy showed up to Egan on Tuesday night, had the iPad and playbook in his hands by bedtime, was on the practice field rocking the new 87 by Wednesday morning, and just a handful of days later, he's on the field, on the road, played 91% of the snaps, turned into one of the bigger unsung heroes of the game. Between the guts it took Kwesi just to go get the guy at the deadline, to him coming in, and the fact that he was just prepared enough to even understand the verbiage, the route concepts, the complicated, intricate KOC offense, to play like he did. He opens the game with a 19-yard catch and first down. Talk to me about that performance and what you think this offense can now look like with a top 5 tight end now in the mix.
Yeah. It made it evident how much of a void there was before. Kirk Cousins has had a reliable tight end every year until now. I mean, he had Kyle Rudolph for several years when he started out in Minnesota. Rudolph declined, but then he, and actually Irv Smith was playing much better. Before Irv Smith got hurt, Irv Smith was the other reliable guy. They had that 1-2 punch, and then Tyler Conklin took their place, and Kirk leaned on Tyler Conklin mightily. So then this year, to not have a reliable tight end, either, Johnny Munt or unproductive Irv, who, for whatever reason, just has not put it together this year and now is hurt again. You could tell there was a void in that offense. And I still think there was a void yesterday, that they're not clicking on all cylinders yet. But having that tight end back in the mix reminded you, oh yeah, Kirk is actually pretty good with a good tight end. Like, Kirk has that safety blanket now between the hash marks like he used to have in years past. Props to Hockenson for learning this offense, learning the blocking schemes, the route concepts, and giving Kirk that safety net on 9 different plays yesterday. Just a massive presence. And I actually posed this question, Luke. Could TJ Hockenson from this point on be the number 2 receiver on this team? I think it's realistic.
To that point, I don't think the Vikings win yesterday without him. I honestly don't. Thielen couldn't get open. 3 catches, had 1 good splash play. Osborne was blanketed all day. JJ, despite the numbers, having what we'll call an off day, right? Still saying something because he still quietly put up 125 all-purpose yards and a touchdown. Running game was non-existent. Cook and Madison combined for 19 carries, 48 yards, 2.5 yards per carry. By the way, that Washington defense, specifically the front defensive line in the trenches, pretty underrated. Jonathan Allen is an absolute beast. We'll have to break him down a little bit later. But I think he comes back somewhat soon, too. So that'll be interesting. Without Hockenson, though, providing that threat in the middle of the field and moving the chains on third down like he did time and time again, I truly don't know if the Vikings are in a position at the end to win that game. And if that's what that dude can do after being in this system for 4 days, 5 days, I can't wait to see him in 4 weeks or come playoff time. This guy is an elite pass catching tight end. He legitimately might be, like you mentioned, Sam, the number 2 option for Kirk Cousins in this offense moving forward. This offense had all the weapons at all the positions except one, and you're only as good as your weakest link. And now it feels like this whole thing can just kind of take off under KOC into kind of a new level, take a new step, a level that maybe we were all expecting and hoping for when KOC was brought in the offseason from the Rams. And the other part of this that needs to be discussed is the guts it took for the first-year rookie GM to go out and make a move like this at the deadline, just to be aware enough that even though this was never part of the plan, I didn't think we'd be 6-1 at this point, the Packers would be struggling the way they are, the NFC's wide open this year. Take advantage of that opportunity and really strike while the iron's hot. Say what you want about him thus far, the draft picks, the trades, the signings, but that move he made to go out and get a premium talent at a position of need, turning your biggest weakness on offense into a legitimate strength. I think that's one Kwesi can really hang his hat on here for a while. A serious kind of resume booster there. I do want to talk about that playoff picture and the landscape of the NFL a little bit. But first, Vikings now 14-1 to win the Super Bowl after this 7-1 start. Vikings now open the week 9-point underdogs on the road, outdoors, taking on Josh Allen and the Bills. The over-under currently sitting at 47.5. Make sure to keep tabs all season long and check those odds out and more with BetOnline. BetOnline.net, fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Stats, news, info, you want it, they got it. NFL, NBA, even MMA and UFC. BetOnline makes betting easy and is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Go to betonline.net today to learn more. That's betonline.net. It's where the game starts. And remember, when you subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota, you're getting endless Vikings talk with local experts. Sam and Ron talk football every day in the Ron Johnson Show. Reggie Wilson gives you a sports anchor's perspective right here on Superior Sports Talk. And the Minnesota Football Party brings together the top Vikings podcasters in the city. Subscribe to the free Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast feed wherever you find your podcasts. Drop us a 5-star review or find our videos on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. And remember, you can now find us streaming on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick devices. Just download our Locked On Sports Minnesota app and enjoy all our content and daily shows for free at your fingertips any day, anytime. All right. Real quick, back to the Vikings. Currently, second best record behind Philly. We're about to get into this upcoming schedule here a bit, the playoff picture. But before we move on, I need to know your unsung heroes of the game, because every week the quarterback gets all the love, as he should. JJ and Dalvin get a lot of the spotlight because they make the splash plays. But you and I both know there's so much more that goes on each and every game that influences the outcome. And yesterday I saw some guys step up in a big way and help impact the game to a point you could make the argument without those guys, there's a good chance they might not win that game yesterday. So give me an unsung hero, just kind of top of your head, that comes to mind after that win yesterday against Washington.
Yeah, I think this guy would be the definition of an unsung hero. Akayleb Evans on defense. He comes in for Cameron Dantzler, who hurts his ankle. Rookie 4th-round pick. Probably the biggest spot of his career, safe to say. He's had spot duty here and there in the first 7 games, but yesterday really thrown in there for a half of football. He wasn't exploited, which is the biggest. A lot of times those rookies get picked on, right? And he didn't get picked on. They didn't target him. They didn't move the ball on him consistently. And he came up with a massive splash play on 4th down. Curious play call by Washington. That's Ron Rivera's problem. But defending Terry McLaurin with a pass breakup to get the ball back from Minnesota. The thing with Patrick Peterson, Luke, is that he defends one side of the field and he lives there, which means that other teams don't have to put their best receivers on Peterson. They put them on, I think, a lesser cornerback in Dantzler and/or Akayleb Evans. And Akayleb Evans was up for the challenge yesterday. He's my number 1 unsung hero.
0 completions allowed, 45 snaps, I believe it was. And again, just to be thrown in the fire, it's one thing to know you're going to get the start. You can mentally prepare to get thrown in the fire early. Well, Cam Dantzler went out, 5, 6, 7 minutes into the first quarter to be thrown in that situation. What impressed me the most, you think cornerbacks, you think pass coverage, the run stopping and tackling ability out on the boundary. I thought I was watching Antoine Winfield for a second. 2 tackles for loss. The way he defended the boundary was outstanding. That gives me a lot of encouragement moving forward for this guy. And as much I've been banging the table for Andrew Booth Jr. because there's some conspiracy out there that I just can't enjoy my favorite draft pick of the Vikings class. They just won't play the guy. Akayleb Evans, if you go back to late preseason, you'll quietly see that he's been kind of ahead of him in the pecking order to some degree all season long. So Akayleb Evans, very encouraging to see. A lot of encouragement when you look at the youth of the secondary for the Vikings moving forward. Lewis Seam, Cam Bynum, obviously Cam Dantzler, Akayleb Evans now, and of course, eventually we'll see Andrew Booth Jr. too. When you win games like that, it's always a total effort and always fun to see other guys who don't get a lot of the spotlight step up and get recognized like they should. Danielle Hunter, obviously another unsung hero there too. A little bit more of the spotlight, but just to see him come around a little bit and get 2 sacks was really nice to get in the stat box. All right, moving to the bigger picture here real quick. Vikings have the 2 seed. They would currently have home field advantage and host the San Francisco 49ers, which, if I'm just being honest, kind of scares me right now. Just the way they looked after their first game with C-Mac. They got the bye this week. Here's the whole picture, though, real quick. Eagles 1, Vikings 2, Seahawks 3, just like I predicted all along, of course. Bucks 4 at 4-5 in that weak NFC South. Cowboys 5, Giants 6. They both have byes this week. Niners 7. You got the Falcons, Commanders, Rams, Saints, Packers. Even the Cardinals and Bears, all within a game or 2 from the wild card on the outside looking in as of now. So that's the playoff picture. Their remaining schedule looks like this. At Buffalo, Dallas at home, short week versus Belichick on Thanksgiving. The New York Jets, 3 home games in a row there. That's awfully nice. At Detroit, 2 more home games with the Colts and the Giants, and then you end with back-to-back road games in the division with the Packers and Bears. When you just hear all that, just knowing what you know, how the Vikings have played, how they're winning games, how the rest of the conference looks, what are your storylines for the second half of the season? What's like the ideal, but I guess realistic scenario look like in your mind that you're hoping for the Vikes?
So we are at the so-called halfway point of the season. There is no real halfway point. It would be, I guess, halftime of the next game. But we're at the halfway point. We're just going to call it that. There's 9 games to go. If the Vikings win 5, they're 12-5. And that's conservative, Luke, because I believe you just laid out to me that they have 5 out of 6 home games at one point in a stretch. They're undefeated at home. I think 12 wins at this point would almost be disappointing. I think that's the floor with the way that they play in that building. There are some quality opponents there. There are also some teams they should beat up on. Detroit being among them. I think the Jets confuse the heck out of me. So do the Giants. They're kind of in that Vikings category. They just find ways to win. I don't know what to think of them, but I also think the Vikings should take care of business. Now, the real question here is there a path where the Vikings get the 1 seed? because unfortunately the 2 seed really doesn't mean anything anymore. It used to be that 2 seed was the bye and the home field in the first game. Not anymore. You got to play in the wild card round. So unless you can catch Philly, it's not quite as critical that you get that 2. Philadelphia looks hard to catch, Luke, and they don't have the tiebreaker. So you're really 2 games behind them. However, I think Minnesota needs to go all out to try. Now, if you fall behind by 3 games, they're probably out of reach. But that needs to be the goal at this point. You're 1 game back, and you don't have the tiebreaker. You need to make a run at Philadelphia and hope that the Cowboys and Giants, take them down a notch in their second half of the season to give Minnesota a chance. Because otherwise it would be 2017 all over again with the Vikings at 2, Philly at 1, and maybe an NFC Championship game in Philadelphia.
Can you imagine the rematch in Philly from 2017, another NFC Championship game here? Here's the Eagles' remaining schedule. Tell me where the loss comes. I see maybe 1. Commanders next week. Colts just fired their head coach. Packers struggling at home. Titans, that's the one. Okay, Titans gives everybody fits. They're playing really good football right now. At New York Giants, okay, maybe a tough matchup. At Soldier Field, Cowboys, Saints, Giants again. So 2 games with the Giants, 1 game with the Cowboys. Just all in all, talk about catching up to the Eagles. Man, I just don't see it. That's going to be really, really tough. All right, moving on. Final segment here, our Gimme One segment, my new favorite segment. Give me one. All right, Sam, first one up. Give me one Vikings season that was most enjoyable through the first 9 weeks of their season. 2022, where we stand today, 2017, that magic run with Case Keenum, or 2009 with Brett Favre. So
Favre and the Vikings were also 7-1 through the first 9 weeks of that season. And that was so special. Now, the Keenum team at this point, we still didn't really know who they were either. Because remember, there was some talk, like they were still wondering, is Bradford going to come back? Is Teddy going to come back? The Vikings were limping along in that 2017 year. They were winning ugly games at Soldier, ugly games against the Browns in London, ugly games against the Ravens. That was not really a sexy team at the midway point. And then, second half of the year, they started beating Atlanta on the road, Washington on the road, Rams at home. So that was a team that ascended in the way that you hope this Vikings team does, where the wins go from ugly and they start to pick up pace and peak at the right time. I think that this Vikings team needs to think that way. The 2009 team, that was just like the perfect collection of veterans with the injection of like a couple of young guys and Percy Harvin and everything just coming together. Where the veterans ran that team. Brad Childress was like secondary, That's a different team. They were just obliterating people though. That was more fun to watch. This Vikings team needs to mimic the 2017 team though.
2009 was the most enjoyable. They were blowing out teams, scoring 30, 40 points every game. Percy, Adrian Peterson, Sidney Wright. This year, it's stressful, but they're winning, and obviously you love to see it. 2017, you're right. You nailed it right on the head. We just didn't even know what we were just waiting for the magic to end at any point, and it just kind of never did until we got to that NFC Championship game. All right, next one. Around the NFL here, give me one of the biggest surprises in the league. Could be a team, could be a player, could be any. Just one of the biggest surprises through 9 weeks of the season.
I think it's Seattle, and that is legitimately a team that we thought was tanking. We expected 3-4 wins from that group and Geno Smith. And the crazy thing about it is that the way they're winning, Luke, is arguably more sustainable and more attractive than teams like the Vikings, Giants, Jets. They're winning convincingly. They're winning at home. They're winning on the road. Their offense is great, and I know that people knock Pete Carroll for the run-pass balance in Seattle, but the run now features Kenneth Walker, who's unbelievable as a rookie. That's a playoff team. I can't believe that the league has shifted so that teams like Seattle and the Jets are rising up, and the Rams and the Bucs and Packers are dropping down. But Seattle might actually be a scary team to play in the playoffs.
Seattle probably had the best draft of anybody in the league. What they did with that draft class just shows you with one good offseason, you go from worst to first. And you're right, everybody assumed that they would just struggle, especially in that tough NFC West. And they still currently hold 2 more first-round picks next year and 2 more second-round picks. So they're going to have 4 more top 50, top 60 picks when this is all said and done. If they put another good draft together, watch out, they could be scary for a long, long time. Last one here real quick with Give Me One. You give me one of the bigger surprises in a good way. Give me one of the bigger disappointments now in the NFL. Again, could be a team, a player, could be anything.
A lot of teams that would qualify for this, but I think
you got
the
a lot
answer
of
is
options
Green Bay.
Here. Yeah, take your pick.
I think it's Green Bay. Just from where they were to where they are is probably the biggest drop off, and they bizarrely actually do have something to play for because of the weak NFC. That final wild card spot is going to be up for grabs until the very end. So weirdly, you still might have a Rodgers or a Brady or a Stafford who's able to sneak in with 8 wins or 7 wins and still be in the playoff mix. And that could be the team the Vikings play in the first round. Like, the Vikings could have to play a 7-10 Packers team as a wild card. So that's actually kind of a scary scenario. But the Packers defense was supposed to be way better. I know they're not the reason they lost yesterday, but the defense hasn't lived up to the billing. And from what I'm seeing from the Packers insiders that I follow, Aaron Rodgers is bearing the brunt of a lot of the criticism, and he is a big reason why their offense just can't click right now. His recognition of the plays and the way they're developing, he doesn't trust his receivers. He's trying to play hero ball sometimes. It sounds really, really bad in Green Bay. So, look at the commitment that teams like Denver made to Wilson, the Packers made to Rodgers. The Rams are in deep with Stafford and have no draft picks. None of them are set up for long-term success. Really rough place to be right now if you're one of those teams.
Yeah, you just hate to see it, don't you? It's just so sad. My heart goes out to all those Packer fans. It's just, It's a shame. That's a shame, Jerry. That's a shame. Every game matters here towards the end, especially when you're struggling, you're fighting for a playoff spot. The Bucs stole one last night. I don't know if you saw it, or I should say late afternoon game. They played horrible for 59 minutes. It just got hot right at the end. Classic Tom Brady. We've seen it 1,000 times and stole one. If the playoffs started, they wouldn't just sneak in. They would have the 4th seed and actually host a game. That's how bad that NFC South is right now. So you're right. We're definitely going to see one of those aging, older veteran quarterbacks, maybe more than one. It could be Brady and or a Rodgers and or Stafford. Going to be interesting to see now that we have officially hit the second half of the season mark. All right, that's a wrap today. Remember, like, rate, review, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Join us every day for another episode with your 30-minute breakdown of everything Minnesota sports. We're a podcast too, free and available, all platforms. Subscribe, drop us a 5-star review, and find us now streaming on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick devices. Look out for our Locked On Sports Minnesota app there as well. That's the man, Sam Ekstrom, on Twitter, at Sam Ekstrom. Find him every day co-hosting the Ron Johnson Show. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter, at Luke_Spinman. Special thanks to the producer, Matt DeBritz. Tune in tomorrow to Superior Sports Talk, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. For Sam, I'm Luke. Until tomorrow, signing out.